Finimize. My name is Russell, a global markets analyst at Finimize, and I'm happy to host today's event on how to build your tax-free portfolio with positive returns with our partners Ethex and Energise Africa. First, we have some housekeeping to quickly run through. As you're coming in, please answer the 2 polls so we can get to know you better. Feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. Tell us where you're tuning in from, and remember to switch to all attendees. Oh, one sec. So everyone can see your messages. This is going to be a 15-minute discussion followed by a 15-minute audience Q&A. Use the Q&A box to ask a question, and if you see a question you like, please upvote it so it moves to the top. That way we can get through the most upvoted questions first. Okay, so let's kick this off. Ethex and Energise Africa are established direct impact investing platforms that offer UK investors the opportunity to invest to support impactful organisations that take positive climate action, improve lives, and strengthen communities in the UK and Sub Saharan Africa. Today, I'm excited to have Lisa Ashford, Director and CEO of Ethex and the founder and director of Energise Africa. In 2019, Lisa accompanied the then Prime Minister on a trade mission to Africa, representing best-in-class UK businesses in fintech and renewables. Lisa's also active in the working groups initiated by the government to build a culture of social impact investing in the UK. And she was recently awarded the PwC Scholarship as an outstanding female candidate to study for an executive-level diploma in financial strategy at the SAI Business School, Oxford University, and she also holds an MSc in Environmental Technology from Imperial College. Lisa, great to have you here. How are you today?
Hi, Russell. Pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Excellent. So let's dig in. Let's start with the basics. What's the main difference between an IFISA and a regular one?
Right. So good question. So Ethex and Energise Africa, as you rightly said, are direct impact investing platforms. And so we offer particular types of investments. And we'll come to those in a second. You might have seen in the wider investment space a number of different ISAs. So, for example, and I should start by saying it stands for Individual Savings Account. So a cash ISA is something that you might know. So that's an easy way to put some spare savings into a bank account and get interest-free returns up to a certain cap, which is set on an annual basis. There's also ISAs that you can have for your children, so they can start saving early as well. There's a longer term property based ISA called a LISA, funnily enough, which is used to basically support people who are on the journey to buy a first property, and the government helps to provide a little boost to that. Then when we get to investing, you've got stocks and shares ISAs, which many people might have. Again, you can have a number of listed stocks and share funds within that ISA wrapper. And you come finally to the IFISA, or the Innovative Finance ISA, which is what I'm going to talk about today. And really, that was introduced around 2016 to provide an ISA wrapper to some of the peer-to-peer lending platforms and similar crowdfunding platforms that were listing companies that are not regularly listed on a stock exchange, might be raising investments, and it's a tax-free way of earning interest on your investment. So really, really forward thinking from the government to provide that, actually. And if you are not utilising that ISA cap every year, then you could certainly think about doing that. And you can have multiple ISA accounts as well, as long as you just don't go above that 20,000 per annum cap per year.
Perfect, thank you very much. So can you give us a few examples of the kinds of investments people can access through an IFISA?
Yeah, absolutely. So Let's give two examples of projects and investments on Energise Africa and Ethex, if I may. So let's start with Ethex. You could provide money as an investment to an organisation that is putting PV panels on schools across the UK. So a really good example of taking action on climate change. That is a bond which would sit within your IFISA wrapper, and you would get a return, targeted return every year for that investment. Another example is Salad Money, an organisation we've supported before, who are an ethical lender who provides credit to those people who are excluded from mainstream financial services for a variety of reasons. And they provide a lot of wraparound support as well for individuals on finances, personal finances. If we turn to look at Energise Africa, if you were to invest in a bond on Energise Africa, let's look at a couple that we've listed before. So an organisation called Rome, they listed a £200,000 bond, and that was to provide 142 electric bikes in Kenya. Or indeed Candy Solar, that was providing solar PV panels on affordable homes in South Africa. So you can see that the way that these investments work are really in a very direct way. So individuals really get to see where their money's going, what it's doing, and not only the financial return, but what the impact is as well.
That's great. And when we think about returns, what kind of performance do investors typically expect? Is it the same returns whether you invest in the Africa relative to the UK? Or do you want to just talk about that a little bit?
Sure.
Thanks.
So it's very dependent on the actual investment. So as you are investing in specific companies or specific projects, the return will always be based on the underlying characteristics of that particular project. You can expect in the range of 5% interest return per year, up to about a maximum of 9 or 10%, very much depending on the project. And we'll come back to liquidity in a minute, but that liquidity could be anything from 6 months out to 10 years, depending on exactly what the money is being used for.
Do you want to talk about a little bit more about liquidity now you brought it up? That's 6 months to 10 years. If you invest in something on a 10-year basis, can you get it back after like 2 or 3 years? Is there a secondary market or?
Good question. So the rules have currently changed on secondary markets, actually. So it has made it a bit more difficult for peer-to-peer lending platforms to provide secondary market services for those types of products. But what we tend to find actually is that there is quite a tendency for people to invest and hold their investments anyway. And actually, they are looking for that interest-bearing return. So when you're thinking about the product, obviously you have to think about what fits within your own individual portfolio. But this could be a nice complement to perhaps more of the short-term liquid products that are listed on exchanges.
Yeah, okay, great. And I suppose looking outward at the bigger picture now, that some of these current US administration's cuts to foreign aid affecting investment opportunities? Does it create opportunities or does it cause more issues? Or is it too early to tell?
Well, big picture, actually Energise Africa was set up and founded on the back of UK government trying to find innovative ways of using finance to accelerate energy access in Sub Saharan Africa. And so they thought that retail investors would want to use their money to help some of the 600 million people who still don't have access to electricity in Sub-Saharan Africa, and to potentially get a return for doing so as well. And, you know, hopefully we've proven they were right. What we see with these cuts to US aid and other organizations is a real vacuum in leadership and a vacuum in terms of money coming into those projects, which is a concern. Our message is very simple, that, you know, individuals can take action, and we believe that actually if we can scale up accordingly, we can start to backfill some of that need for money to flow into emerging economies. And, you know, we can continue to work with those governments and private companies who are still very much willing to make their money go further in emerging economies. And we have a number of match fund facilities that institutions have put forward and work with us on.
So it's a combination of private and public-private, sort of in terms of like the funding sort of structure, and that will differ from project to project. Okay, yeah. That's great. So we've covered a bit about long-term investments and the flexibility within it. I mean, they started off in 2016, you said. So what's the risk profile been like? There's so far everything kind of gone according to plan? Sort of in, right, you know, come the end of the duration of the project, things have been returned. Has that been the case?
Well, as we know, with all investments, there is risk. And it's fair to say that in some cases, there have been some challenges, particularly with COVID, just as public listed market companies had challenges, so did unlisted ones. So, you know, investment is not without risk, and we've had to manage our investors through that period. We're very transparent about what the returns have been and the portfolio successes. Those can be found on both websites, and we do believe that everybody should think about their own personal perspective on risk and return before they invest. And we always provide lots of information so that people can understand what they're investing in a very easy to understand and simple format. So the information is there, and it's something that a lot of investors come back to us on and say, we're very transparent and we make the risks very clear.
Well, I suppose getting onto the practical level now about the actual investing. How's actual investing done? Is it directly through platforms like yours, or like
Yeah, so there are a number of different investment platforms that offer IFISA wrappers. You can invest directly through Ethex or Energise Africa, and everything is pretty automated once the investment is made, and the portfolio is very clear in terms of the investments that have been made and the returns. So as you would expect with, you know, any investment platform, there's that level of information, and a number of different IFISA products out there in the market as well.
Okay, great. You know, if it ties in with like one of the top questions in there, is the you know, the type of investment opportunity peer-to-peer lending. The top question was, I know there are a lot of challenges for Americans living in the UK to having ISAs. Is this limitation applied to IFISAs as well? I'm assuming that the first part is yes, but does that mean that other investors, you know, outside the UK, can they still invest in this type of product?
So it is true that American investors, unfortunately, at the moment cannot invest through the platforms, which is something that we would like to change in the future. So if they have a account based in the UK and are UK residents, then they can invest through either platform.
Okay, fair enough. So next question was, ESG seems to have got a bit of a bad write-up in the last few years with greenwashing and the like. Has this been fair, or what do you think are the big misconceptions about ethical investing? I'm sure you could talk about this for a couple of hours. Try.
Yeah, so I think it's totally fair question, and there has been greenwashing. You will have seen in the news that various funds that purport to be green actually may have some quite large infrastructure energy companies within them. And I guess the point is a lot of people don't know what they're really investing in when they're investing in a fund, and they rely and trust the provider to, if they say that it's green, that in fact that is the case. What we now know is you actually have to look under the lid and see what is the actual investments in that portfolio. Thankfully, there is more regulation coming through whereby people who advertise green funds have certain conditions that they need to meet in order to advertise on that basis. So green labels and more transparency for consumers is definitely the way things are going. I suppose from our point of view, it's very clear what you're investing in, because you're not investing in a fund, you're investing in specific direct companies or projects. So what you see is what you get, basically.
And there's no greenwashing with anything that you're doing from these platforms, that's for sure. Yeah. Has there been the same pushback to ESG in the UK as well? Has it been much? There's talk about in the US. Have you seen that in sort of practice when you're trying to do the partnership type structures?
No, I think we're living in a slightly different environment when it comes to people's views on such matters. And we're certainly seeing a lot of interest still, and as I said before, actually a lot of frustration. So people want to know what they can do and how they can play their part.
Okay, that's good. Thanks. I suppose a question here. We've covered the next one along, which is the typical percentage return for IFISAs compared to other ISAs. You said it's 5 to 9%. It's more like project online returns. So should we think about IFISAs and these projects as being similar to bonds, and as such our portfolio allocation to reflect sort of like a bond, similar to a bond allocation?
Absolutely. They are largely unlisted bonds, which are listed within the IFISA wrapper.
And then the next question, which I'm assuming this person is a UK-based investor or can invest in ISAs, because she says, I'm an impact investor, but I'm investing outside of the ISA structures. Will I be able to bring my existing portfolio of impact investments into an ISA wrapper? Is that something that can get done?
So you cannot transfer existing investments, but what you can do is, if you have free cash in one of your IFISA accounts, you can transfer that into a ethical IFISA account of a provider. So it used to be the case that you could only transfer your IFISAs in the whole thing, but now you can do partial transfers. But you can only transfer the cash, not the investment, if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
It does to me. Yeah, I hope Christian, who asked the question, can understand. It makes sense.
Yeah. But every tax year you can open up multiple IFISA accounts, and as long as you don't go over that £20,000 a year cap, then that is totally fine. So you have the ability to transfer free cash from old ISAs if you want to, or you can open up new accounts every year.
Okay. The next question going on is, can we invest in a diversified range of projects within the platforms, or is it on a project by project basis?
Currently, it is up to each individual to choose the projects individually. However, we normally have a number of projects listed at any one time. So over a period of 6 months, you could quite easily build yourself a nice, diverse portfolio.
That's interesting, which comes in nicely to the next question. Is there a minimum investment?
So on Energise Africa, minimum investment is £50. So it's very accessible for everyone. And we have a £100 first investment guarantee, would you believe? So that is encouraging people to try the platform if they haven't before, to do so in a risk-free way, in small amounts to get comfortable, to understand what they're doing. And then they could choose to invest larger amounts in the future. So that's a nice perk of Energise Africa. And that was originally backed by UK Aid as part of the UK government to encourage the use of the platform. On Ethex, it actually depends per investment what the minimum size is, but typically it can be £100 or £200. So again, very accessible for individuals to come and test it out.
That's really good. I'm going to go a little bit more on a theoretical one, or more of a viewpoint, not theoretical, Sometimes we're led to believe that we either invest impactfully or profitably. Do you think this is still fair, or is it something you've had to overcome?
My view is that you can have a fair and reasonable return and create impact as well. Of course, there will always be the absolute highest impact products which might forego some kind of financial return, and there will be the highest financial return products that have no impact. I believe there's a happy medium in the middle there, where you can, achieve a good, fair return and create impact. But obviously everyone's different and everyone sits perhaps slightly differently on that curve. And it's, up to everyone to find out what their favoured position is, which might change over time as well.
Sure, risk profile, return, what people want does change. I'm going to jump one question down and then come back to the other one, because we're talking like practical things here. What are some upcoming opportunities in ethical investment that you think are flying under the radar from the most mainstream advisors, or for individuals, I guess, you think like are on a good trajectory in the next couple of years? So I suppose it ties in as well with how many new projects come in every few months, 6 months, as a rolling basis. Does it, something?
Yeah, absolutely. We aim to have at least 2 new investments, or 3 or 4 every couple of months. So, it depends on how popular they are, obviously, because the quicker they fill, then the quicker they go, and then the quicker we list more. So it's a constantly evolving process. But I think there's enough choice for people to, over a couple of months, to really test different products and get involved in different sectors and themes. So some might have a very specific energy focus, so access to electricity, for example, on Energise Africa, or sustainable transport, as I mentioned before, with the electric motorbikes. On Ethex, you might be providing some ethical finance to individual consumers, or you might be funding solar panels across schools across the UK. Lots of different choices, and the ability for people to find out more information on all of them.
Okay, great. I'm just going to scroll down to a question here from Charlie Adams. Says, looking at the two websites, the majority of products are bonds of some description and some mature after a period of time. What impact does this have on the ISA wrapper for investors? Can the proceeds from the matured bonds then be transferred into a separate ISA environment, e.g. with another provider, so that the 20,000 annual allowance is used and tax-free status retained?
So yes, basically, once it's under the wrapper, when you get returns, they sit on your wallet, and you can either reinvest those within the IFISA wrapper, or you can choose to transfer to another provider. So, you know, as long as you keep it within the IFISA wrapper, either at Ethex or Energise Africa, or another IFISA provider, then it just retains that tax-free status. And remembering that this allocation is annual as well, so you can always add to it over time.
Now, getting onto some of the more practical one here, the question comes from my experience, getting people to use their money to do good rather than just seek the highest return for the lowest risk possible is a matter of mindset. Curious to hear your thoughts on how we can encourage more people to invest for impact.
Oh gosh, yes. Well, what a brilliant question. I mean, I think really just think about those dinner time conversations. You know, what an interesting conversation to have with your friends and family over dinner if you've just funded, you know, hundreds of people to get access to electricity, and in Kenya, for example, and you've actually then also got a financial return that you're going to invest in some other amazing project. I think the power of peer conversations is really important, and you know, we need to start talking about our money a lot more, and that's why Finimize is great, right? Because you're having these conversations. And I think historically that is something that people haven't necessarily tended to do, and there hasn't been a place for them to do it. So we've got to create those opportunities for conversation, and people actually need to start doing it themselves as well, and being a bit brave and saying, actually, it's not boring. This is really interesting.
It's a good smile there, talking about something passionate. It's a good one, yeah. I mean, there's a few more questions here. We're running out of time, so we're coming down to the last couple. Yeah, some of them we've covered before, so I'm just trying to scroll through. I suppose diversification, about how many projects do you think is what I suppose, how many different projects do people typically invest in on your platform?
It's a really wide range, and obviously I can't give financial advice. So individuals might only invest in one project, see how it goes, and then, you know, come back to that portfolio later. Whereas others might come in and split their money immediately across a few projects. Would you believe we do have individuals who've invested in hundreds of different, you know, projects over. We've been going, Ethex has been going for over 10 years. So, you know, there's been plenty of opportunities. So, you know, it totally depends on your risk return, but also your impact goals, I think.
I think that's a very good answer, because it just depends. Do you want to go for one project or many? Depends on what interests you, and also, as you said, back to your risk and return sort of profile. Yeah. I think we're just about out of time, so I'm afraid it's all the time all we're allowed to do. So thank you, Lisa, very much for joining us. And please, listeners, if you leave the event today, a pop-up survey will appear on your screen. Please take a few minutes to let us know what topics you're interested in hearing about future events. Thank you for joining us, and I look forward to seeing you at another event soon. So thanks.
Thanks, Russell.
Pleasure. Thank you.